I'm just going to head to YouTube and see if I can see what Craig's doing.
Curianos.
I know, I think that's race 1. That is race 1. Oh, now I can see the live comms. In fact, we are live on YouTube, so me talking randomly to myself has made it.
Good evening,
live
everybody,
into
and welcome to yet another really well produced episode of the Pink Commentary Team.
Yeah, so I've got you, James. Who are you following tonight, James? You're probably still trying to join a meetup to find out. I am currently watching Alan Bray. I don't know who's on screen on YouTube because we were prattling on the Pinktron and have no idea what's happening.
I'm just trying to invite someone who's probably not going to see the invite to actually get on this thing.
Oh, you can't invite me, can you?
I've invited Dom out the marmot, and he will hopefully be asleep and not realise I have done it. I'd like to think that this is probably the worst start we've had to one of our live streams in the past, but I suspect that may actually not be the case.
No, it's definitely not. I think we had. I mean, we had an entire episode where I spoke to myself. We've had several moments of entire silence. This is great. So, what course are we on tonight, James? I can confirm we are currently following Alan Bray and D Pedal, which is such a good bit of normative determinism. So, Alan currently sat in 18th. Just looks like he's been dropped slightly by the lead group on one of the climbs. And Mr. Nominative Determinism, D Pedal, is currently in 30th, hitting the climb as well. So, James, tell us about the course tonight.
So tonight we have a single lap of the Kappa Quest course. I say single lap, it's a little bit misleading because there is a fairly lengthy lead-in, and the lead-in takes you up to the top of the KOM, at which point the lap starts. So you then go down the hill and then you do the climb again. I am now following IAN Elston, one of our regulars on this stream. I couldn't possibly tell you what position he's in because my meetup window is blocking half the screen. But he is currently going up the hill, so he is on his way to the end of the lead-in, and looks like he's doing a good job.
And it's an interesting course, this, because this is definitely a gravel bike course, isn't it? So quite limited bike choice. There's only a few gravel bikes in the game, aren't there?
Yeah, and I think generally the consensus is, the consensus is generally that the Canyon Grail is the best. As to what everyone has chosen tonight, that is a different question entirely. Having a quick look at what IAN is riding, it definitely looks to be a gravel bike. And it looks like it's the Canyon Grail. So good choice from IAN, and hopefully he will go well. Still waiting for the timer on my meetup to count down to 0 minutes, so I can see what position he's in. He's actually chasing Alan Bray.
He is, yes. 5 seconds back. Alan also on the Canyon Grail with swift wheels, by the looks of it. So they're hitting the bends on the way up this climb. It's a bit of an odd climb, this, isn't it? There's some steeper sections. Alan's on one of the flatter sections now. It's not a particularly smooth gradient, and we were talking on the podcast earlier. There is the ramp is quite significantly before the finish, isn't there? So there's a ramp about 800 meters out, and then it flattens out. So if you're going to go at the finish line, you've really got to go at that 800 meter point, haven't you?
Yeah, you do. I mean, I'm not on the first lap, but definitely actually coming down towards the end of a race. IN is just hitting the bridges where it flattens out a little bit to give them a little bit of a respite before it kicks up towards the KOM banner. Um, it's I'll tell you what, if you like to climb, it's a good course. It is definitely one of the slower climbs because you're on gravel the whole way, and it's only 12.5 kilometers, but the top A's were taking about 25 minutes earlier, so barely able to do 30 kph, which you definitely wouldn't see on a tarmac course, even with a bit of hill in the way. But it's a fun route, and I always love routes with a summit finish, just because it's just a bit more fun. And obviously there'll be many people who disagree with me, but unlucky, I choose the routes.
For me, it feels a bit like the top of the Epic Com, in that you've got those sections
Yeah.
that are rollers. It's all about kind of keeping that momentum as you go over them, and definitely as you get higher up on the climb, it definitely starts to feel a bit like that. You've got to measure your efforts. There's suddenly the gradient's off, it's on again. So yeah, it's a fun route. I must admit, when I did this was about 90 kilometers into riding all of the new routes from Nyokio. I think when we rode this, James, wasn't it? So I was
Yeah, I think it's
probably
probably more
probably
like
not the
90.
best place to judge how much I was enjoying it.
Yeah, I think we're probably about, I would like to say 95k in, and it was definitely not the most comfortable of climbs. And
Oh, I
me
switched
thinking,
to the mountain bike, which was a mistake on this. I switched
um,
it was the same speed as the Tron. Interestingly, in terms of I was riding next to somebody who was on a Tron and doing the
I
same
think
watts per
actually,
kilogram as me.
I think actually the mountain bike. I'm going to spout some numbers that may or may not be correct, but 98% of statistics are made up on the spot. I think the mountain bike is actually only 2 seconds slower up this climb. But when we were doing this, and we were chatting to each other on Discord, I said, "Oh yeah, it's about a 7 minute climb," and it took me like 10.5 minutes. And I think you'd probably lost the will to live after the first 10 and wanted to start killing people and swear at them quite a bit. But Ian Elston is just through the KOM banner, and he's just started the race. He's onto lap number 1, and I can
So
see.
you're talking about IN. I think people are watching Dean Pedal, who's also doing well. Let's just catch up where Dean is. Dean is not quite at the top of the climb yet, running 25th, or might have just just hitting the top of the climb now. And I'm watching Alan at the moment, who's started the cruise down the other side. Not many groups here though. It's kind of smashed up the race nice and early on, starting on this climb, hasn't it?
It is massively split open. Ian's actually doing really well in 22nd place. Got a field of 77 tonight. There's a field of just over 100 in the earlier race. But Ian's doing a cracking job. And hopefully he can hang on to that as well. Nearest riders behind are about 10 seconds. He's got a group of 3 with him. Looking really good. His heart rate is about 180, which probably isn't the best place you want to be, but he's going downhill, so hopefully he'll be able to bring that back down, holding about 1.5 on the downhill, so heart rate should come down again. And we'll see how he gets on the next climb.
Yeah, it should be interesting, James, because Dean is in the group behind Ian at the moment, and they've got a group of about 5 or 6 on the go, including somebody on a Tron by the looks of it. So could we see some of the pack dynamics trying to come into play there as the slightly larger pack is able to catch up to Ian? It looks like they're only about 10 seconds behind him, so it could be interesting. And 10 seconds up the road from Ian, Alan is ploughing a lonely furrow at 3.5 watts per kilogram, so he looks fully in time trial mode as he rides down the descent here. So it's obviously one of the newer race courses, this one, James. We also, as we said, we rode a lot of the new courses on Nyoko. We got all the new badges last Friday. What are your plans? What are you thinking? How soon can we get those routes into the Herd Racing League and into the Herd events? Are you looking to get them in as soon as they become available on the game?
Relatively, I think. And based on past experience where Mercury launched for the first time, we're looking generally around 2 to 3 weeks before they're made publicly available. So I'd say probably mid-December, when we can start using some of the new routes in our races. And I think the one that excites me the most for Bullseye is Rooftop Rendezvous. So that's a 3.8 kilometre route, but there's the Rooftop KOM bang in the middle. Not the biggest of climbs. It's probably 2 minutes, 2 minutes 30. Perhaps slightly under if you're going hammer and tongs at it. But generally with Bullseye, it's a sprint for the lap banner. However, when you've got a KOM in the middle of a lap, you're going to try and look to make gaps during the climb and just try and hang on to the lap. So I think it's going to be more about hammering the climb than actually hammering the lap banner. So I think that'll be really interesting.
And it will be genuinely a climber's bullseye. So most of the time, the bullseye is at best a puncher's bullseye. Like if you're a really good sprinter, usually it's for you because it's all about being first across the line when you hit that lap banner. So yeah, it could be a really interesting course to put into the bullseye just to change up who can race to the win on that course as well.
And then you've got Sprinters Playground, which is 12 kilometres long, and it's got 4 sprints in it. None of the sprints are short. But if you stick 2 or 3 laps into that, you've got 8 or 12 sprints. It's going to be fantastic for HSRL.
Yeah, that's going to be a cool course, I think.
But then you got Temples and Towers, which has got the Rooftop KOM, and then you go into Yumesi, where you have the Castle KOM and the Temple KOM, which is what we're doing tonight. And that's like I think a 32-kilometre lap. So a decent sort of like 45 minutes for the A's, maybe just under an hour for the B's, and so on. But with free climbs for points opportunities. So I think that'll be a really good summer route as well. And we were saying in the Pink Tron just now that you could practically run an entire series in Neokio because the routes are so good for races.
And the good news is I think we've waffled on long enough to actually get to an interesting part of the race, as it was mostly descending there. And it looks like Dean Peddle's group is very close to Ian's group, James.
Having a look,
Looks like they're just about to make the catch, in fact.
Yep, this group has just got big.
This group has got big. So yeah, Dean and the riders in that group have worked really hard on that descent. They've caught up to Ian. I don't know if Ian's kind of sat up slightly, thinking the best of the pack dynamics. Alan had somebody catch him at 5 watts per kilogram. He's continuing off at higher watts per kilogram and watts per kilogram that are slightly all over the place. So we'll see how realistic their ride is at the end of the race.
Yeah. I suspect that Ian properly broke himself on the first hill and had to sit up quite a bit.
He's now chatting to people in game. He's saying hi to Dean and Lloyd.
Yeah, that's Lloyd Jones. Lloyd Jones out of ATP, and obviously Dean Peddle as well. But it's not too long until we get to the next climb. So we've hit the tarmac. We will hit the lap banner for too long. And then it'll be the climb to end the race.
So Alan continues in 19th at the moment. Jameson, who is the rider who is alternating between 5 watts per kilogram and about 2.5 watts per kilogram, is now back in front of him. So it'll be interesting to see how Alan does up the climb. He's pretty solidly TT'd this route though. So he is 11 seconds ahead. I don't think the pack dynamics are going to be helpful enough to those chasing him. If Alan can maintain his form, I think he's staying ahead of these folks on the climb. So lots of exciting stuff happening back with you, though, James. There must be about 10 or 11 riders in that group now. It's going to be a bit of a race up the climb, I think.
Got a good group here. We're just going past the pens. and we've got about 3.5 kilometers to go. So definitely expect to see this group get fractured fairly heavily once we do hit the climb. But for now, they are on the tarmac. We have one Yellowtron. Whether or not that's a pen change or if it is actually a Yellowtron, expect them to get dropped fairly heavily on the KOM. Definitely a gravel climb, but we will see how that one materializes. Ian hanging on nicely as this group kicks on.
Yeah, it's you got to think that has to be a pen change. It's going to become apparent very quickly, isn't it? So, what are you thinking at this stage, James? How are you playing this climb when you race it later, or you're not racing at the moment? But how would you be playing this climb when you come to race it?
I I think it depends on how much you can recover on the downhill and on the flat. If you've got good recovery on the flat in between the climbs, I definitely kick really hard for the first half of the climb, and then see what sort of damage I can do behind, and then try and hang on to the top.
And in terms, like we say, is that sprint, that finish really is about going at 800 meters, isn't it? So it really is all about timing a sprint and making that effort at the right time. But there's going to be a good sort of 7, 8, 9 minutes of climbing before then, isn't there? So hang on the wheels. That's generally got to be the tactic here, isn't it? It's still a draftable climb, isn't it?
Yeah, the vast majority is. There are bits at like peak between like 8 and 10%, but as a general rule, it's a very draftable climb. So if you've got people with relatively similar watts per kilo, you should be able to hang on. And just on that note, Ian looks like he might be getting dropped. He's trying to hang on, but it looks like a group of about 8 are kicking on. See the Yellowtron towards the front of that group. Ian looks like he's hopefully going to just catch back onto this group as we just hit the gravel. So KOM banner coming up in about 10 meters time. So we will see how this one goes. How's Alan doing?
Yeah, he's still 10 seconds up the road riding on his own. So yeah, trundling on quite nicely. Dean continues in this group as well. So yeah, it looks like they're saving their matches ahead of getting ready to kick each other in the legs up this climb, aren't they? I think it's back down to 9 seconds. I don't think Alan's being caught because I think he's just going to time trial it to the top. But yeah, we might see a few go off the front of this climb and maybe try and bridge up to Alan.
Yeah, we call it a draftable climb, but at the gradients we're looking at, it's not going to be the draft isn't anything like what you'd expect to see on the flat. So, Alan, well, the gap is now down to 6 seconds, so this could come back, but we will certainly see in the next kilometre or two. Ian's back in this group. We've got three just off the front by about 5 meters. Remarkably, the Yellowtron is hanging in there, but we don't know if it is actually Yellowtron or if it was a Yellowtron in the pen changed to a gravel bike. We're not entirely certain, but this is definitely the flatter part of the hill before it kicks up once we get into the. I'm going to call them sidewinders. I don't have a better name for it. I apologise.
It's as good as name as any, James, isn't it? So that's what they should be known as forevermore.
Mhm. But
Yeah, it did close down a bit, didn't it, Craig? Thanks for that. It came down from 10 seconds to kind of 6 or 7 now. I'm never sure I trust Zwift too much on these timings as you hit the climbs. It does tend to be a bit more distance based rather than time based sometimes, Zwift, doesn't it? So not sure if he's actually got any further away or whether just because he's moving a bit slower, Zwift is making it seem closer, but looking at the watts, actually, there's a few people hitting kind of low fours, while Alan is hitting low fours himself. So it's entirely feasible that this group are catching up to him. The group, including Dean at the moment now, as we watch,
Yeah,
just a bit ahead of that group Ian's in.
Dean's group looks to be a group of probably 6 or 7, and there's bunch there as well. Ian's definitely pushing. He's holding low to mid freeze to kick himself up the hill. But it looks like he is going to be kicking himself only at the moment and not other people. He has some relatively unpronounceable person from Canada just behind him. He's got S. Gorge Calbourne, or Calburn. However that is pronounced, is just 4 meters behind him. But it's looking like the group in front are pulling away, and they're definitely kicking. Lloyd Jones is doing low fours, high threes, and well, certainly looks like they are pretty close to Alan, actually.
And yeah, they're getting very close. They're down to us, and they're down to about 10 meters now from Alan, including that group. Dean's been dropped slightly off the group, including Moore and Jones, which are getting a bit closer up. Dean's taking his feather as he uses it to get up to McGee and Jones and the Nitro Rider. It looks like Moore has kicked on to catch up to Alan, but Dean with this feather is really eating up the road as he rides up towards the back of Alan now as we watch them now. So we're getting quite close. How about Ian? It looks like he's hitting some good watts as well there, but it looks fit for Ian James.
He is hitting good watts, and he's dropped Gorgie Calbourne, or however it's pronounced in Canadian, by 2 seconds or 15 meters. And you can see Yellowtron just up in front, and he is trying to bring Yellowtron or C Lammers back in. So we will see how that one plays out. Ian is currently sat 25th wheel out 77, with not too far left to go at all. I think we've got about 800 meters to the finish line.
Very soon. That was the steep bit, which is the point to make the attack on. Dean is it's only like half the bridge behind. He's sprinting now. He's sprinting on the back of L Jones and T Moore. He's on the back of Alan Bray as well. So Dean is he's so close into the back of him. He's sprinted past Jones. He's now trying to work his way up to the back of Moore. Looks like I have to switch view into it. Looks like he's getting onto the back of the wheel of Moore, so he's going to be catching up as we go into the sprint. Looks like we're hitting past these flower pots now, for want of a better word, as we go under the bridge. No sign of the archway yet, but could be because I've joined late and I can't really see where it is. So Dean and Alan, looks like they're sitting up slightly. Nobody's really driving the tempo at the front. I can see Ian's 20 seconds back, so it isn't going to be bothering that. Dean needs to get off the front of the road. Needs to get off the front now. Oh no, we've got a bit more climbing to do, so I think he actually can be on the front. We're now hitting another 8% gradient bit. I think this is actually the moment now where Brent was talking earlier about this is if you've got any matches left, this is where to burn them, as it really does flatten out after this 8% section here, doesn't it? So let's see how they get on. Dean's hitting 4.5 watts per kilogram. Alan's only able to answer sort of 3.5, but he is staying in the draft by the looks of it. Oh, he's just been dropped. Has he been dropped? Oh, no, there's a little kick from Alan there as he works his way just to get back onto Dean's wheel. Coming round the penultimate hairpin bend as we look to approach this, hitting this 10% gradient. This is where it's really starting to hurt. Oh, and it looks like Alan's really struggling there. Watts dropped off quite a bit. I don't know if he's had a pedal slip or something. He's dropped right back. Dean's dropping some big watts around that corner, and now we hit the descent into another little bit of gradient, and then it flattens out as we hit this bridge. Quick update on Ian for us, James.
Colburn has caught him and he's gone past. Colburn went past around about 4.5 watts a kilo, and has pulled out a 4-second lead. Ian looks to be pretty secure for 26th place. I don't think he's going to catch Colburn.
Alan's back. Alan's back on the wheel of Dean. Alan, they're hitting the second of the bridges as we come towards the con banner. Dean has dropped his sprint. He's out of the wheel. He's sprinting now. Looks like he's going to get there ahead. Alan is hitting his sprint now. I don't think he's going to catch Dean. Is he going to beat the Nitro rider? I don't think he did across the banner there, but no, so Dean rode over, taking the place ahead of the rider from ATP and ahead of Alan. It's a great little sprint, but great work from Alan. Work his way back onto that group there. Let's jump back to Ian.
Yeah, so Ian's realised he's not catching Colburn in front, who's now 8 seconds up the road. But Kei Inui, the Japanese rider behind, is 19 seconds back. So Ian is just going to coast over the line. He's got one more turn to do, and then he will be over. Last 200 metres. And just coasting through at 1.5 watts a kilo. And can you blame him at all when with a 17-second lead over the rider behind? And he's putting on a little show by going up to 1.6, and he is over the line. And with that, our race coverage will conclude, even though I don't think anyone's actually been able to see coverage of Ian. I think we've had coverage of Alan and Dean for the race. Thanks, Craig, for the pictures. Thanks, Steve, for joining me, and I hope you all have a good weekend. And just remember, Zwift is life, and Bologna is the greatest place in the entire world.